Today, I'm going to be showing you 3 different ways to make RPG animations for your levels. So the first way is on contact. As soon as you stand on the couch or the bed, then it plays the animation. And then the second way is by the press of a button. You could press the button to stand up and sit down, or stand up and lay down. Then the third way is cycling through animations, which is good for providing poses for your players to take pictures in. Alright, so for on contact animations, the really obvious thing to do, the first thing that will probably come to your mind if you try to do this on your own, is to use a broadcast chip and set it to all in contact, and then you would just place your animation on there. The animation that I'm using is called alternate set, and it can be found in Sackboy miscellaneous, so if you scroll all the way to the bottom and then scroll up a bit, then you'll see it. And this method works, but the problem with it is that it's thermal inefficient, which means it takes up a lot of thermal. So what you want to do instead is you want to place your broadcast chip anywhere in your level, set it to infinite range, and include all 16 layers, and then you would place your animation on there and connect an impact sensor to your animation. And the impact sensor would have a tag with the tag labeled chair, and then you would just have to copy and paste the tag instead of copy and pasting the broadcast chip, which means that it would take up less thermal in your level. So then you just place the tag on every chair in your level, and then when you sit on it, you'll see that it works. So yeah, it works just like the other method, except it doesn't take up as much thermal. But the problem is that you can sit on the arms of the chair. So if you sit on the arms of the chair, even next to the chair, then the animation will still play. So we're gonna fix this by using sticker panel. So we're just gonna place a thin layer of sticker panel on the couch, and we're gonna make it invisible, so 0% opacity. And instead of placing the tag directly on the couch, we're gonna place it on the sticker panel, which only covers the part of the couch that we can sit on. And in order for this to work right, we need to set the impact sensor to include touching, which means that any material that's like sticker panel or hologram where you could just walk through it, the impact sensor will sense that as well. So you'll see that it works just like the other one. So then for the bed, you would just copy and paste this, change the impact sensor's label to bed, and then you would copy and paste the tag and change that to bed, and you would place it on the bed. And then you would just have to choose the animation. So the animation that I chose for the bed, it's called lying down side loop. It's like near the bottom, near the sitting animation. So you'll see that it works. If you're finding this video helpful, don't forget to press the like button. Method 2 is for animations that activate by the press of a button. So we're going to be using the same broadcast chip settings we had before, 16 layers, all in range, infinite range. And then we're going to be placing a controller on the circuit board. This isn't going to be visible in play mode, we just need it so we can detect which button is being pressed. So you want to set it to receiver and controlled by nearest player. And then you want to make a circuit board for the controller really small, because you don't need it, because the broadcast chip already has a circuit board. The first logic piece you want to place on it is a 2-port selector, and then I'm just going to wire L1 into that. You could choose any button, just keep in mind that square is for the pop it, and then X is for jumping, but circle and triangle have their own functions that can be disabled in the global menu, and I already have sock bucket disabled, as you can see. And so then, you just want to choose an animation for sitting. I'm using the same one that I used last time. And then you just want to connect output 2 of the selector to that animation tweaker. So you'll see now when you try it, you press that button. I chose L1, so when I press L1, it sits down and it stands up. So then, you just want to do the same thing for the laying down animations. So you want to copy and paste the selector in the animation tweaker. And I'm going to use circle for laying down. And I'm going to use the same laying down animation that I had before. So you'll see now, when you sit down, you could also lay down as well now. But there's 2 issues you want to deal with. 2 of them are personal preference. First one is being able to sit down and lay down on the bed. Second one is being able to lay down on the floor. But the third one is the one we're going to deal with first. That's being able to sit down and lay down at the same time, which is probably not what you want at all. In order to fix this problem, we have to understand what our logic does. So the first selector controls sitting, so the first input is standing up, second input is sitting down. Then the second selector, first input standing, second input laying down. So we want it so Sackboy can't sit down and lay down at the same time. So in this case, another word for standing is not sitting. And then in the second one, the second selector, the first input represents not laying down. So we want it so Sackboy can't sit down and lay down at the same time. So if we took the second input and plugged it into the first input of the next, that would be like saying Sackboy, when Sackboy is sitting down, he's not laying down, which is what we just said. So if we plugged the second input, which is laying down, it's like saying when Sackboy is laying down, he's not sitting down. And you'll see that works. Alright, so right now I'm pressing the button to sit down, and it won't let me sit down because I'm laying down. And it's the same thing when I'm sitting down. When I sit down and I press the button to lay down, it won't let me, which is what we want. Another way of solving this problem is making it so when the player sits and tries to lay down, then it just smoothly blends to the next animation. And then you could do the same thing for laying down. So the way that we're going to do this is by using an AND gate. So we're going to make it so when the player is sitting down and presses the button to lay down, then it stops sitting down, which allows the laying down animation to play without the two blending together. So let's see how that looks. Okay, so it sits down and then it lays down. So now we just have to do the same thing for when it's laying down. It can smoothly sit down, because right now it just blends together if you try to do that. So we want to make it so when the player is laying down and presses the button to sit down, then it will stop laying down, which allows the sitting animation to play smoothly. So let's see how that goes. So you could lay down and sit down without having to stand up to play a new animation. I almost forgot to mention, so if you want it so the player can't jump or move around while they're sitting, then you can use a gameplay tweaker and set it to 0% movement and 0% jump. So the player will try to move and jump, but they won't be able to. And the way you do that is by connecting the second output with a selector to your gameplay tweaker, and then you do the same thing for the other selector. You could use an OR gate, but I was sort of lazy here, but an OR gate would also work, so you don't have to use two gameplay tweakers. So you'll see here, when I open up my controllinator, I'm trying to move, I can move around right here, but when I try to move around right here, it won't let me because of the gameplay tweaker. And it's the same thing when I'm laying down. Right now, we still have the problem of being able to sit down and lay down or on the floor. So there's two ways to fix that. The first way is to limit sitting to being on the couch and limit laying down to being on the bed. So we're going to do this using an impact sensor and an air gate. So the impact sensor is going to be set to include touching tag. The tag is going to be detecting is the chair. So impact sensor, you plug into the AND gate, and then the L1 button, which I chose for the sitting down and laying down, that's going to be plugged into the other input of the AND gate. And the AND gate is going to be plugged into the cycle input of the selector. So what this is saying is when you're on a chair and when you press L1, then you could choose between sitting and standing. And you just copy and paste that for laying down, and you change the impact sensor to bed, and then you wire your circle or whatever button you chose into the second input for the AND gate, and then you wire that to the cycle input. So then you would just place the right tag on the furniture, and as you can see, I could sit down here, but I can't lay down. Like I'm pressing it to lay down and it won't let me. And I also can't sit down or lay down on the floor. Like you see the wires lighting up, but it's not doing anything. So I can't sit down here, but I could lay down. There's a second way to make it so you can't sit down or lay down on the floor. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it so you have to be on either a couch or a bed to use the animations. So we're going to use an OR gate. We're going to connect the impact sensors to the OR gate, and then the OR gate is going to be connected to a NOT gate, and the NOT gate is going to be connected to the eject input of the controllinator. So what this is saying is when you're on a bed or a couch, you can use the animations, but if you're not, you can't. And the eject input, it's like disabling the controllinator, which is like disabling the controls. So you'll see if I try to sit down or lay down on the couch, then I should be able to. But I forgot to wire it, so I'll do that right now. So once I wire it, you'll be able to see that I can sit and lay down on the couch. But on the floor, the wires don't even light up. Like I'm pressing it, but you can't see it. And then right here, the wires light up, and I can sit down and lay down. Some RPGs have poses, so the players can take pictures, and they normally have around 20, so there's plenty of options for poses. But I only included 10 here for the sake of my sanity, because these take a long time to wire up, and it's sort of tedious. But even though I included 10, my selector has 11 inputs. And I did this so that Sackboy is able to run around freely without sliding around like this. See, like when he's on an animation, he could just slide around like that. So I don't want it to be like that the whole level. So I included a free space for the player to switch back to so they can just run around as normal. So now what you want to do is you want to select all of these and you want to set the blend time to something like 0.20 or 0.30 so it blends smoothly. I have mine set to 0.26. But if I had set it to something lower, like 0.4 or 0.5 or 0.10 or just 0, then it would like snap to the animation like this, and that doesn't look smooth at all. But if you set it to something higher, like 0.60, then it would blend slower. So blending isn't necessarily the speed of the animation, it's how long it takes for Sackboy to shift into the animation that you chose. And like I said before, 0.26 is the blending time that I normally use for these. In the tweak menu, you could adjust the animation settings, so like the rotation. You're probably going to be using yaw a lot for chairs facing the other direction, so 90 or 270 for chairs facing left and right, and then 180 for chairs facing the back. For pitch, it basically rotates it throughout the layer. So if you rotate it a certain way, it looks like he's on his back, and then if you rotate it another way, it looks like he's on his head. And then for roll, it makes it look like he's rotating on a motorboat. So you probably won't be using these two as much. If you're an RPG creator, you're probably going to be using yaw to get the position of the chair. In the animation tweak menu, there are other animations to choose from other than the ones that I've showed you. So there's alternate sit 2, there's lying on back, there's lying on front, and of course lying on side, like I showed you before. But you can look in the LBP3 story characters, and they have their own sitting animations. Not all of them are good. Like, I don't like this one right here, but Newton has one that's pretty decent. But the LBP2 characters, their sitting animations are actually sitting. They're like treated the same way as idle fidget animations. So you'll see here that this one also isn't sitting. And it's the same way for all of those. So I would just use the LBP3 ones. But back to miscellaneous. If you want to do alternate sit into sit, that's when the speed comes into play. If you think that 100% is too fast, then you can speed it up a bit to like 200%. Well, maybe not that high, but this is just an example. And then you can place it on your animation logic, and you'll see that he sits down, but he sits down over and over again. So to fix this, we want to turn loop to off, and what that means is that it won't play continuously, or over and over again. So you'll see now, he sits down, and he only sits down once, which is what we want. But if you think 100% is too fast, then you can set it to something lower, like 50%. And you'll see now, when he sits down slower. If you want the animation to play backwards, then you just have to set it to something like -50% and set loop to yes. And you'll see now that the sitting animation plays backwards, which makes it look like he's standing up. If you have a longer animation, what you might want to do is change the start and the end time to get a specific part of the animation. So celebration 1, it's like 5 seconds long, a little bit over 5 seconds, and I just want that end part right there. So I'm gonna set it, I gotta lower the speed first, but I'm gonna set it to something like 350 for the start time, just so I can get that jump part right there. And then I set loop to off. And then when you place it on here, you'll see that it plays it only once, but it plays it kinda slow. The problem isn't necessarily the animation speed, it's the blend time. So we forgot to adjust that. Over 1 second makes it go way too slow, so 0.26 makes it blend to the animation we chose way faster. The actor label is more for sackbots and movies, so you can just place an animation tweaker on a sequencer, and it will play on the Sackbot with the matching actor label. And then this is for changing color. So just organization. If you like to color code your logic, that's all that it does. It just changes the color of the circuit board. You can also animate the other characters, but most RPGs only use Sackboy. Anyway, that's how you make RPG animations for your level.